very, very kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak to your organization. I think this is such a great way for you young students to get involved in the community and to really learn about adulting. And it's really hard because it's really hard to be adults, by the way. But this is just kind of like a glimpse of like you running this organization, and you're going to the state capitol rallying, trying to get your bill to pass, and so that way you can get the curriculum going to the school. That's amazing. That's very amazing. When I was in high school, like we had nothing like that, okay? Nothing like that. So I'm just very proud of you guys. And this is definitely like extra time out of your day of the schooling, just to come here and listen and to hopefully learn something new. But my name is Lor Xiong. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand, Ban Vinai. My parents they flee from communists from Laos to Thailand in 1979. We immigrated here in 1987 when I was 8 years old. We came to Minnesota. That was a shocker, coming from like a nice 80, 90 degree weather to like winter here. So that was a big change for us, but we learned to assimilate and accept the cold weather here. But before I get into my life story, I really want to, for you to really understand my parents' struggle to, go from their home country and fleeing to Thailand and coming to America. And I'm not gonna, say a whole lot about, how we immigrated here, but the most important thing is that we're trying to understand how hard it was for them to journey from Laos to Thailand, and to give us the opportunity to live in this country, brought us here, and to live the American dream, to be able to have the opportunity to go to school, to have a career, and to kind of give back to the community. Okay, so I would like to start with, by the way, I am working on a book. It's a memoir that I'm writing. It's about my life story. Obviously, I went through a lot of experiences. When you come from a different culture, there are many things that the mainstream, or if you're not in that culture, it's hard to understand. And sometimes we experience things differently from other people. Just like if you have a different culture and there's different practices there that we might not be aware of, or we might not understand. But this is a great way for us to kind of showcase and share our experiences as immigrants or refugees. Okay. So I'm gonna start. So this book is in its infancy level. So I haven't gotten the book to my editor to edit it yet. So this is just kind of like a raw sketch of my book, but it really starts out with my parents, how they journey to, they flee from Laos to Thailand. Do you mind if I sit down? Okay. The human spirit is like a floating vessel in a turbulent ocean. It is subject to sinking or surviving. Ironically, leaving the shores of Laos reflects this passage. At this beginning point of my story, this book's voyage, I can only hope to be a loose rudder, as I wasn't even born yet. Being only a fetus in my mother's womb, I can only speak in proxy for her and capture her deepest thoughts and memories. Fleeing Laos took place in the early months of 1979, years after the last American troops left Vietnam. Historically, it was also in 79 that the new communist regime of Vietnam invaded Cambodia and took political and economic control. Forcing the Hmong people from their homeland in Laos was almost like giving them a death sentence. They were caught in this unforgiving triangular web of the desperate countries of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, mired in political mayhem, war, and the aftermath of years of war. 2 years prior to this decision, they had to flee from village to village as Vietnamese soldiers continued to bomb and kill Hmong families and children. It was no longer a safe place for them to live. One morning, the relatives from the village came together and decided to flee to Thailand. Although the journey would be dangerous and risky. It was better to take the chance and hope to make it to the other side than to keep running and hiding. My mother, father, and the relatives who undertook the journey had to endure the endless Laotian jungle for 6 long, grueling months before they reached the Mekong Delta River. Their group consisted of over 30 people, including my father, mother, brother, 2 sisters, and my aunt, which is my dad's sister. My grandfather chose not to leave because of his age and frailty, so he stayed behind with his younger children. My dad assured him that he would come back to get them once they were settled in Thailand. During this perilous journey, fear of capture by Vietnamese soldiers led them to sleep during the day and only travel at night. With no transportation available, women carry rice and food in straw baskets behind their backs, while also carrying young children and walking by foot every night. Men carried guns and remained ready to fight at any given moment to protect the group. My mom's straw basket was particularly heavy as she had to carry my little sister, along with food and her personal belongings. Additionally, she was pregnant with me at that time, making her work even harder to keep up. To compound matters, this occurred during the monsoon season, with almost nightly rains leaving them perpetually wet and cold. Many women and children fell ill, and some died along the way. My sister was around 2 years old and also became sick. With no medicine or proper clothing available, the only recourse was doses of opium used to numb pain and aid in sleep for crying babies. Despite the challenges, my mom did her best to comfort and nourish her, ensuring her recovery. At one point, they reached the edge of farmland, and feared capture by the owners, they decided to hide and wait until dark to cross over to the other side of the jungle. As night fell, they resumed walking through a steep path. When they reached the top, they discovered a significant drop that they hadn't anticipated. My mom lost her footing and she fell nearly 4 to 5 feet down. The impact was so intense that she feared a miscarriage, but fortunately nothing happened. In a lighthearted moment, she would later joke that I held tight onto the umbilical cord, fighting for my own survival. Finally, they neared the Thailand border. Just days away, however, it also became very dangerous, evidenced by the increased presence of Vietnamese soldiers patrolling the area. Aware that Hmong people were fleeing, the group encountered many dead bodies, most of them women and children. At this critical juncture, my dad and a few other men decided to scout a safe path to the river ahead. Leaving my mom with my aunt and the remaining relatives, they set out. Out of the 30+ people who started the journey, only about 15 remained. As they approached a wooded area near the river, they reached a fork in the trail. My mom watched as the relatives took a right turn, and she slowed down to wait for my aunt, who was responsible for carrying my brother. Seeing her catch up, my mom hurried to rejoin the group, assuming my aunt would follow. However, as she settled in, she realized my aunt and brother hadn't arrived. Concerned, she waited, thinking maybe they had to use a bathroom. But hours passed, night approached, and worry grew. She asked a cousin to watch my older sister, while she carried my other sister on her back, setting out to find them. My mom retraced their steps to the point of separation, calling for my aunt. When she reached a rice field, she kept calling with no response. Unable to venture further to avoid capture, she was lucky not to be discovered. As she was about to turn back, she heard male voices approaching. Quickly jumping into a nearby ditch, she whispered to my sister not to make a sound. As the soldiers passed, she prayed desperately to heaven and her dad for protection. She looked up in the sky, prayed helplessly. Heaven, Dad, please protect me and my child. Please cover us from the eyes of the soldiers so we won't get caught. Most Hmong people would call for heaven or their deceased parents or grandparents, if their parents are still alive, for help when they are in danger, just like Christians would pray to God. Her father had died when she was just a little girl. He was also a soldier. He stepped on a minefield and was killed. Miraculously, right after her praying, calling for help, the soldiers turned around and walked away. Feeling the coast was clear, she returned to the campsite, saddened and terrified, yet determined to stay strong for my sisters and herself. Days passed without news of my dad and the men. Feeling defeated, she thought about my aunt and my brother, how my aunt and my brother were separated from her. With no knowledge of their fate, rumors circulated about men being caught and killed by soldiers, prompting the group to decide to head towards the river without waiting any longer. Alone and 7 months pregnant with me now, my mom faced the daunting task of carrying her belongings and children with no help. Despite feeling isolated, she knew she had to keep moving as everyone was looking out for themselves or focusing on their own families. When they finally made their way to the river, there were more challenges to face. It felt like the worst has yet to come. She was not a strong swimmer. She also had several kids clinging to her for dear life. And add to the high water level of the Mekong during the monsoon season, the odds were against her as surely as playing the lottery. Nonetheless, the odds drove her forward. Her desire and heart gave her hope, and that's what she clung to, hope over odds. She wanted to tie the inner tubes she had purchased along with other relatives, but they refused, saying that she would weigh them down. Who would save her, she thought. Although it was dark, the raging sound of the river tells her it was as dangerous to cross the river as being captured by soldiers. Although they all came as a group, but now they wouldn't even allow her to swim next to them or even close to them. Nonetheless, she must make it to the other side. She came a long way now to give up. A cousin of my dad's side of the family, a girl who couldn't swim, had no way to cross and was also desperate. So mother told her if she helped with her kids, she would tie her to the inner tube and they would all travel together. She agreed to carry my oldest sister on her back. The water was cold, yet Mom didn't mind, for she has one goal, and that is to cross to the other side. She was swimming against the current, since the current was strong and kept pushing her downward. Didn't know if she made any effort moving forward. She wanted to tread harder, but she also knew she needed to make sure she could sustain her strength so they can make it to the other side. It was dark, not even a single star in sight to shine just a little bit for her. She was cold and losing strength. She looked up for any signs, anything that could signal that she's going in the right direction. There it was. Mom saw a dim light off in the distance and used that as her benchmark, focus, and eventual goal. Everything else was in total darkness. Subsequently, I learned that the Mekong Delta River is the longest river in Southeast Asia. It was dirty and murky, alive with small and large creatures. Back in the day when it was less tamed, there were also crocodiles, snakes, stingrays, and even riverside tigers. The distance across from Laos to Thailand, following my mother's path, was approximately 1 mile. That 1 mile must have seemed forever. It wasn't like they were magically pulled across the river, but they had to work at it, physically and every other way imaginable. It took numerous nerve-tugging hours to fight the elements, but her strength was waning. Her arms and legs trembling from the paddling of arms and legs as the lights seemed to be losing their brightness. The water seemed endlessly cold. Her axe's baby weight and the currents kept pushing her downward in a semi-sinking fashion. The power in her limbs were draining from her body as she finally felt like giving up. Her fight was gone, depleted. But suddenly, like a miracle dropped upon her, she felt her feet hit the bottom as the bright lights were upon her. The swim was over. She made it. They made it. Many others didn't. She was happy and relieved, but miserable at the same time. My older sister had become more sick. Mother found some tall grass and made blankets of sorts and covered the kids. They fell asleep shivering, safe at last. Looking back to Laos at the lengthy time up to forced departure, it was a terrible scenario. So the landing on Thailand seemed safe and reassuring on the surface. So that was just a little part of how they crossed over to Thailand and to the refugee camp. And of course, my sister didn't make it. She died 10 days before my mom, delivered me. So just to her credit, she was such a strong woman. Like, I just kept thinking back, and when I, wrote this, and every time I read it, it just brings tears to my eyes because, as a mother, I just couldn't even imagine what she's going through and the amount of strength that you need to be able to go through what she has gone through. But we lived in the refugee camp for 8 years before we immigrated to this country. We came here when I was 8 years old, and we did not really have any formal education over there. I remember the first time going to school, there was like a small bus that came, and my mom took me probably like a block away from our apartment. We were living with my uncle at that time, and I had no idea what's going to happen. And so my mom took me down the block, and there's like this yellow bus came and it opened the door, and the bus driver looked at me and smiled, and I didn't know what to think, and she's like, well, go, you're gonna take the bus and you're gonna go to school. And I looked at her and I said, well, am I gonna ever come back home? And so I literally asked her that, and she said, yes, the same bus driver will send you back home. And so that was my very first experience, not knowing the language. I think the first couple of years to me was a blur. I honestly cannot really remember, my experience there, because it was just more about surviving. I wasn't familiar with the food that they were serving and the cafeteria during lunchtime. I wasn't familiar with the culture and the language, and it made it really difficult. But as children and as students, we are resilient. We grow and we learn the language, and we learn how to read and write. And one of the things that my parents always tell us is that education is the key to success. And even though my parents didn't speak the language, I have a lot of siblings. I came from 5 brothers, and I have 5 brothers and 6 sisters, and it was a big family. But with my parents, they would always encourage us to stay in school, and they said, if you do not stay in school, you don't learn. Your future is going to be less of a future. And so that was always, ingrained in us. And I remember coming home every night, the family, my mom would always have dinner ready for us. As soon as dinner was done, we cleared the table, and we were very poor. We live in North Minneapolis in those projects, but they would clear the dining table, and we would just sit around and then do our homework. Even if we don't have homework, we have to learn, we have to read, we have to have a book and read and write. And that's what my parents encouraged us, especially my dad. And so with that, with my parents encouraging us to stay in school, most of us, we finished our college, and we got some sort of degree, became very productive citizens in America. I am a mother of 4, 2 boys and 2 girls, and both of my sons are in the military, or they were in the military. They're out now. So they're both veterans. My youngest son was in the Navy, and my oldest son served in the National Guard. I became a teacher at age 22 or 23. And before that, I was an interpreter. I worked in the school system. I helped with, Hmong parents. I interpreted for them. I work in the ESL department, working with immigrant students, and that was kind of like my passion. Just thinking back about my experience, not knowing the language and how difficult it was for me, and so I felt like it was my calling to go back to the school system and help these immigrant students. And I have, it was such an honor for me to be able to work with them. Earlier I told you that I have a K-12 license in ESL, so I taught for about 20 years, working with many different ethnic groups and many different students. And one of the most rewarding thing for me as a teacher is that I would have, students coming in with zero English and they're scared and they don't know, and it's like their first time in school. And, I can put my shoes and I could understand their struggle and how scared they would be. And so for me to be able to comfort them and to give them an environment where they feel safe and they feel like someone is there to assure that they're going to be okay, that was very rewarding to me. And at the end of the year, it's like they can speak broken English, or they can speak a few sentences in English for me, and to me that is like rewarding to me. I love that. And the reason I quit teaching, I resigned from teaching 2 years ago because I was running for a congressional seat in my district. I'm from St. Paul, so I'm from Ramsey County, District 4. I saw that there was a need to advocate for ordinary families like my family and like my students. I did not teach in a rich neighborhood or a rich school with rich kids. I grew up in a public education, and that was kind of like my service to the public, and working with many students kind of like with the same background, like living in some rough neighborhoods where their parents are struggling, and as teachers you give them that hope and that opportunity to say life is hard, and especially when your parents just arrived in America and it's hard for them to not having an education or not knowing the language. It's hard to find good jobs to support the family. But I always tell my students, when you work hard and you know that your parents had to work hard to get you here, so that way you could have the opportunity to go to school and learn and to get and someday you can give back to your parents. And that was kind of like my message to the students, and that was kind of like my passion, is to help looking at the struggling of my community, the struggling of my students and the families, and there wasn't a voice that was advocating for them. Definitely, there's certain communities, but we needed someone who's in Washington, D.C. to advocate for everyday people like us, immigrants, that we need our voice to be heard. We want safety, we want academic excellence, we want, to be able to get ahead, not just to get by. We want safety in our neighborhoods. We want the children to be able to get out in the street and play like we used to. And I know that today it's really hard. It's very it's not as safe as it used to be. And I definitely know that because where I came from, I did not have opportunity. I did not have the chance to go to school. But my parents make a big effort to bring us here. My dad always say, I brought you to this country, not to dirty the country, but to make it better. And he always preached that, and I truly believe that. And that for us to, if we want this country to be better than what it is, then we have to make sure that we have leadership like all of you, because we all come from different walks of life, and we bring our backgrounds, our culture, and the richness and what we experience, and what our parents, their story, and we can embed it together and make this country a better place for all of us. And we don't have to talk about skin color. We don't have to talk about this culture, that culture. That's division. We're talking about same opportunity for every single one of us. And we need to, stop talking about that, because that's not, doing any service to immigrant people like us. We don't see ourselves as, less than or not equal to any other group. We're all Americans, and we have to remember that. We all live in this country, and we're all Americans. And one thing that we have that is so special that no other country in the world has is we have the American privilege. And what does that mean? It means we have the opportunity to get an education and to become whoever we want to be. Doctors, lawyers, to be the president of the United States. That's only, if where I come from, you have to totally change your name. Like in Thailand, if you want to be even a teacher or even like in government, office, you have to totally change your name into like a Thai name or something. You have to lose your identity. In America, we don't. We would wear our name and we should say our name proudly. We don't have to change our name to an American name or to an American last name to be, to get a job or to be in school. We can be who we are. And that's what's great about this country is that we have that American privilege and that opportunity. So I hope that you guys will, learn something today and just kind of like keep that in your head and in your heart and remember that you are going to be our future leaders, and that I want to fight for strong academics for you. I want to fight and to pave the way so that way someday some of you will dream, because you have the opportunity and you can dream of becoming the president of the United States if you were born in this country. But if you are not born in this country, you can still hold office. You can be in the congressional, you can be a senator, okay? But these are leaderships that we need and that this country needs. It is not talking about division or, who we are, the skin of our color, but it is about a collective, inclusive, that we're all Americans and that we have to, make sure that we sustain this for you, for your future, for the generation to come. Because this is the only country that we know and that we must protect, and we must continue to make sure that we have that, that American dream is alive for you and for, the grandkids and for the future. And that is why I wanted to run for Congress, just so that way I could have, a voice at the table. Because no senators or no congressmen or women in the White House in Washington, D.C. right now, they don't have the background that I do. They have not experienced the hardship that I go through. Many of them, some of them, they come from money, okay? But I know that a lot of us, your parents have to work hard. Some of you in high school, you have to work part-time job, just so that way you could get your own clothes and you can help out with the family. But that's, that is the type of people, the type of community that I came from and I want to represent, to have that equal opportunity for everybody and not just, a certain group of people. So, yeah, and that's me. So if you have any questions.
What policies do you actually have that you'd be fighting for in Congress that would improve some of these things you're talking about, like safety and access to education, poor quality education?
So, what's really bothering me right now is that they're lowering the standards for students, right? They're dumbing down the education, the curriculum. Even like in Chicago particularly, they want to lower their the test scores, the standards, just so that people of color can pass. To me, that's racist. I feel like everybody, we are smart and we're intelligent and we don't need them to lower the curriculum, because what is that saying? Is that they're saying that the students here cannot, achieve. And when you lower the academic standards, students are not reading at a grade level. Like in Minnesota right here, there's like over 50% of students cannot read at grade level. And that is an issue. That is an issue. And we're talking about, these are going to be our future leaders that will be leading this country. And so I'm going to push that we are not going to lower the standards. We're going to push the standards higher. We want to make sure that our students pursue academic excellence. Okay, we're not gonna say, oh well, like since they can't pass and they can't all get A's, we need to push lower. It's okay to get a B or a C. that means you have to work harder, that means you have to study harder, that means that you need to seek tutoring or other things, but those are things that schools and district has to make it available for you. Is that the tutoring, they're taking away tutoring, they're taking away extracurricular that really helps with your academic, and those are the things that I want to push into the school system.
Do you have an example of like in Minnesota?
Example as
like of some of the extracurriculars as far as like education and testing going away goes? Because I know in Minnesota, at least through a lot of the United States, the reason that they get rid of kind of those extra testing like requirements, especially for second or post-secondary education, is because a lot of school districts don't have, a lot of kids within the district don't have access to actually do that testing, because a lot of that testing requires money to get into. I know for AP testing, it's about $60 per test. So a lot of the times, the reason why colleges remove those testing requirements is because of the financial incentive or the financial requirements to do those tests in the first place. So as far as is there like an example in Minnesota where like that tutoring aspect is being taken out?
So I'm not talking about those the tests that's they have to test to get into college. I'm just talking about some of the standardized testing that for elementary and high school they test. They want to lower that, and they're using they're using those test scores to lower the standards. I'm not a big like a test person per se, because I think that and this is kind of like my argument when I was a teacher, is that and I might be a little biased, but I don't think I am. I think that I'm being very fair, because when they're looking at these test scores, they're always comparing to like the white students and versus like students of color, right? To me, I don't think that you should compare like student of color, their test scores like this and the white. And then especially when kids that are speaks another language, and especially when they just first immigrated to this country, you cannot compare and say, well, they didn't do great on this testing. Yes, because they don't even speak the language. That doesn't even make sense. But once once they learn and grasp the language, then that's different. But and so the testing, I just feel like it's a little biased, and when they're always comparing apples to oranges, that doesn't make sense to me. And I said, why can't if you were going to do these standardized testing, and if you want to compare, why don't you compare according to like schools or districts and things like that. And you cannot just compare like to white kids or to other kids. To me, I just don't like that type of comparison. I just feel like I think that there's just so many variables when it comes to testing and students' background, and it's not like one test fits all. Although we do need some sort of test to help to see where the kids need help. So like in St. Paul public schools, they're taking a lot of extracurricular, like the tutoring program. There used to be extra money in the budget to hire private tutor, where like they do have budget. So they have like after school programs like Monday, Wednesdays, so they offer 2 times a week for students to stay. Especially with students who do not have the money to play musical instruments, or maybe they're very talented in arts, and then that there's that extracurricular, or students who just simply needs extra help with reading or writing. So they offer like different types of specialized classrooms or classes after school for these students. Those are being taken away, and I know that even before that, there was like they offer there's like extra money in the budget that was they would have the students who sign up, and then there's like these tutoring private tutoring organizations or agencies that they provide personal tutoring for students. They used to provide that, and all of that's been taken away. All of that's been taken away. And as the budget gets, the more, I feel like the more the school system gets, like, it's not like their budget's being cut. I feel like the money is, they're getting more money, but programs are being cut. And I can only speak to my district just because I'm more familiar with where I come from. There's just so many people that they hire at the top, and they're getting less and less teachers. Even they call it special teachers on assignment. What they do is they're walking around with a clipboard because they don't want to be in a classroom, and that's why the classrooms are getting bigger and bigger, not smaller and smaller. They have all these teachers on special assignment, and they're walking with a clipboard and grading and seeing what the classroom teachers are doing, and then telling them what they should or should be doing. That's like wasting tax dollars. These teachers should be in the classroom, and if you went into education to educate students, you should stay in the classroom unless you want a different position. But I feel like they're wasting, our tax dollars on these specialized teachers who's walking around and with a clipboard grading other teachers, and so you have so many people at the top level and not enough doing like the groundwork. And I think that's where my concern is, and that's where I feel like I want to really push and the tutor extracurricular and more teachers in the classroom. And we don't really need people at the top level, because they need to have contact with students. They need to be in a classroom, and they need to make a difference in the students' lives.
I know in Anoka we were especially kind of feeling that teacher strike in the district that was just recently happening. I know the bigger problem around that is just having not enough substitute teachers for one, but then also not having enough teachers in the district as a whole.
Right.
A large part of that they feel, when I read the contract that was initially offered to teachers, was just like pay and job benefits and job security through that contract. So like, is there any plan to support teachers through the school districts?
So, I love teachers. I was a teacher. I think that it's not so much of the pay. I think that pay is great, especially if you have your master's or a higher. Beginning teachers, yes, but the salary isn't that bad. The problem is that, and there's more to it than just the salary. Like, healthcare benefits sucks. Let me tell you that. It sucks. You pay so much, and you barely get anything out of it, and so more of our money are going into healthcare, and then into all kinds of PACs that is trying to advocate for more money, but then these money doesn't get to the teachers and it doesn't get to the students, and that's where the problem is. It's not so much, and I wish that teachers would see that, because if they would stop hiring, like I said, stop hiring all these top level people in the district and really, utilizing these money to students and for teachers, then we shouldn't have that issue. But, it's very complicated. But, I support teachers wholeheartedly. I support, schools, but my problem is just that the budgeting, how they're using these money, is not going where it should be, and that is where we need to revamp. Yes.
How are you going to push for a better education environment?
Yes, for sure. Yes. I just feel like right now, I've seen, there's just so much bullying, unsafe, and children, going to school and they're not feeling safe at all. I remember when my parents, we moved to Marysville, California for a couple of years, and my oldest brother and sister were in high school at that time, and it's like a small town in California. When we moved there, it was at the end of the school year in 1992, I believe, and 1991. It was 1992. Towards the end of 1992 in their high school, it was like one of the first school shooting. and both of my siblings were there. And so the guy who came and shoot at the school, he was like I think he was like a high school dropout. He went to that school and he didn't graduate, and I think he came back because he lost his job and his girlfriend broke up with him, and he was really angry at this one teacher because he blamed that teacher failed him. That's why he couldn't graduate. And so he came and held like over 100 students in hostage, and then killed 4 students. And so that's always been kind of like personal to me because my siblings went through. 2 years ago when I was campaigning, I went down to, I want to say Lakeville. So Lakeville, they have implemented some sort of security, and I met these 2 guys. They're the one that took me on a tour of the high school where they would install some kind of equipment in each classroom. And if there was an active shooter or something happened in school, these doors would be locked, and there's like special doors that they can't break through. It's like bulletproof, or there's some kind of they revamped the whole high school, and I was really impressed with the security, and I spoke to the principal. I spoke to a few students, and just how they feel about that, and that is something that's not that expensive. I want to, I'm like, Minnesota can definitely, we can be like the first state to implement all these safety measures in all schools. So, that's something that parents, when you guys come to school, we have a peace of mind that if there's something dangerous that, even if a student is out of control and, they might, have some dangerous weapon with them, that it will be, because there's security cameras, and, they are also, I think that this alarm system is connected to like the police station, kind of like the fire alarm, right? Do you know how we got a fire alarm system worked? Do you guys know the history of that? So I think there was like a big fire that started in Chicago, and that it was like significant, killed many people, and so that's how they did the fire alarm. So I think that what they did at Lakeville is that kind of like using the fire alarm system, but this is like a safety system that will be actively be connected to like a police station or like emergency station. I don't know, like fire department, and then they can, like, if there's any emergency, any dangers, anything that will threaten the school, they are there immediately. They know exactly where the unsafe environment is, and they don't have to look around or trying to figure out where it is, because high school can be big, right? And so that's something that I thought that was so great, and it's not that expensive. Like he was telling me, like a football turf would cost more than implementing like the system in a school. And I said, why aren't people doing that? Why aren't the school going crazy over this system? I don't know. They just don't want to use the money. But I feel like if I'm in, like if I have a seat in DC, I want to implement that because we need it so much. You guys need it so much, so you could feel safe. Anything, anywhere, things can happen in any place, any time, any given moment, but to make sure that you guys are safe is a priority.
Would you want just like a passive security system, or would you be advocating for more police involvement in schools too? Like for instance, we have our deputy officer here in the school. Mm-hmm. Would you be wanting more officers in the school too?
I think that, I do, I do support that. I just don't think that, I know that there's just been a lot of news, about, police and everything. But I feel like if there's a presence of, a police, especially in high school, many kids will feel safer, and you know, they are trained to de-escalate things, and I think that, of course, there should all, you know, we do need more trainings and how to, you know, work with the younger population, because I think they're trained more to work with adults, but you know, anywhere, just like teachers, we need more training. It doesn't matter, we have our degree and we're specialized in teaching English, but you know, we continue to learn and grow by, you know, getting more trainings, right? And I think that that is true for any profession or, you know, police, and there should be a presence of some kind of, you know, police in school, especially in high school, to help us de-escalate, you know, and you know, a problem that arises. But definitely, for sure, you know, just more training so that way they know how to deal with students. Okay, I think she said.
Do you think the students' learning experience should be tailored more to their academics?
Could you say more about that?
Like having each student have like their own specific like tutor to help them out if they're failing, say, art, like if they're failing a specific class or subject, they could receive help almost immediately or something.
Oh, of course. And that's where I feel like there should be a budget for that. There should be a budget for that. And if we can stop spending so much money on the top and give it to the students, where, you know, if we prioritize it correctly, the money should go to the students. Yes. Sorry, maybe one more, because we're almost out of time.
Where specifically would you get the money like taken out of to put towards these programs that you want to push?
So I wouldn't be able to do that. I think it would have to, this is something that we would have to probably talk to. Of course, you know, it's gonna be with many people, like the money would go to, you know, the Minister of Education first, and then we would have to sit down with them and say, you know, because each district is different too, and depend on the student population, depend on, you know, what programs they have. For example, in St. Paul, you know, they have, you know, bigger budget for ESL students because they have, you know, a lot of immigrant students there. So, and then, you know, like here, you might not have that budget, but we would have to have some kind of incentive or some kind of policy and say, hey, you know, this is where the money for the students, and when we disperse this, each district has to, you know, do this or use a budget for this. And it's not gonna be like, oh, you know, it's gonna be done right away, but I think that when you know, when you advocate for this and you have a certain budget and said, this is the money that we need to make sure that it goes to students, and we, you know, like oversee it. But sometimes when you give the budget, right, you're like, this is for this, but, you know, like it doesn't get through. And so we probably have to hold people accountable. And that's the other thing, is that if there's no accountability and we don't have people to really say, okay, where is where is the money? Where is it spending? I mean, did you provide this for, you know, like the students? And so when you disperse those money, you know, there's gonna be accountability, and there's gonna, you know, and eventually, you know, we will have to make sure that districts has to buy into what we offer. So, all right.
Yeah, let us thank you, Lor Xiong, for like reading such an amazing story and sharing all these details of her life stories. They were really interesting, so let's give her a round of applause.